I am delighted to be here today with you. And my name is Ines Gutzmer. As Jennifer shared, I've been with Aflac for 2.5 years. I'm an extremely happy camper. I was delighted to see the information Jennifer shared and the words of Natalie at the beginning. And to see that purpose and doing good is so very much part of the fabric of the small business community. At Aflac, we do believe in caring on purpose, and that's what we do every time for our employees, our policyholders, and the community in general. So, you know, I'm here today to share the results of a survey we conducted in May about small businesses, which is clearly very relevant to the discussion today. Since 2015, Aflac has been sponsoring research. And when we do this, we really try to understand what it means to be socially responsible as a company, because we do believe in social responsibility and we live by our words. So what we want to understand each year is try to examine the topics that are at hand, the issues that are, you know, they're being sharing by a small business community, how they are interacting with their consumers, how they're interacting with their employees, etc. So this is why we call this survey in particularly Care in Motion, which is the small business story. And I think you're going to enjoy some of the results, which frankly were a surprise for a lot of us. If you go to the next slide. So this survey is called Care in Motion. So why the focus on small businesses? Because most people think that Aflac is such a big company. Why do we care about small businesses? Well, the reality is that a small business is really the lifeblood of our company. If you think about it, we serve small businesses like yourself. We help small businesses to understand what are the best benefits that they can provide to their employees. So these small businesses are served by independent sales agencies, which at the same time are small businesses themselves. So as you can see, small businesses is really a huge part of our company, and we care for small businesses, we nurture small businesses. When the pandemic hit, we, in addition to some of the support provided by the federal government, Aflac created a special loan for small businesses, in particular for our independent sales agents, which were obviously suffering. So that's why small business is so important to us. So what we wanted to do this year is examine the effects of the pandemic, right? It's been a tough year for all of us. It's been a tough year for you as well, probably. So we wanted to see how small business owners adapted to the very, very imposing challenges of the pandemic. I mean, how the relationship changed with their consumers, with their employees, with the community. So what happened there? What were those effects of the pandemic? So this is what we call Care in Motion, because the interesting part of this survey, which was extremely uplifting, is to understand that in the more dark and dire situations, care was in motion, and people was there right for each other, standing in the gap. So we're going to play a very short video, and then I'll come back with some of the numbers. Jeff, if you want to go ahead and play, you just advance the slide and the video will play.
The COVID-19 pandemic and resulting lockdowns brought our lives to a halt last year. Frustrations mounted, with strong and diverse views on how our community should respond. But in spite of this, Americans across ideologies were remarkably united in their support for at least one thing: our nation's small businesses. The 2021 Aflac Business Culture Survey reveals a small-town effect that saw communities large and small rally behind their local businesses. Shoppers consciously chose to forego the convenience of ordering online to instead buy local, and they were willing to pay more and tip more, even as personal incomes fell for nearly half of consumers surveyed. Small business owners noticed and returned to consideration, with strong majorities saying they stayed just as connected, if not more so, to their customers and the greater community. Local businesses also doubled down last year when it came to investing in their employees, with 4 out of 5 business owners saying they maintained or increased employee benefits, all while avoiding layoffs. personal connections also grew stronger in these trying times. Over half of owners said they learned more about their employees' lives outside the workplace. All of that proved to be good business, as consumers placed greater importance on how a business treats its employees when deciding where to spend their money. As the disruption of the pandemic persists, it can seem like our sense of community has diminished. But left or right, urban or rural, we see strength and resilience in the bond between America's small businesses and the communities they serve.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. If we go to the next slide. So isn't that inspiring and uplifting? I mean, it was for me. It was absolutely inspiring and uplifting, because if you think about it, when there's a crisis, you just tend to shelter. You tend to just go inside and protect what is closer to you. And this survey showed quite the opposite. And I'm going to talk to you about a little bit of some of the findings. So what this pandemic showed, if we click one more time, Jeff, is that there was more involvement. More involvement. Owners become really, really involved with their employees and their consumers. There was more care. If you click one more time, there was more care. The pandemic, if you think about the fact that many of the businesses really curtailed their profits because of the pandemic, they really, instead of decreasing benefits, they improve, in some cases, benefits for their employees, just to reward their loyalty. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then the third thing, if we do one more click, is social good. And I think that both Jennifer and Natalie were referring to that earlier. I mean, social good is not the right thing to do, but it's also really good for the business. And most of these small business communities, you will see that they really turn to the community and invested in doing good. So we'll talk a little more about, if we go to the next slide. So the numbers, I like numbers, I like data. I always said I'm a data addictive because the numbers do tell a story. So look at these numbers, they're quite impressive. I mean, if you think about that, even in the most difficult times in the pandemic, 81% of the people that we surveyed, which is about 2,000 businesses, they said that they grew closer to their employees, and 53 said that they became more involved with their personal lives. So it was not only about them, it was about them, their families, their circle of friends. But what I like about this data, this piece of data, is that 86% say that they will remain informed and connected. So this created not only the relationship, build a relationship that is going to be long lasting. So that's really very powerful. And then 76% maintain and increase the closeness to their customers as well. So as you can see, this idea of a small community was not only with their employees, the immediate circle, but with their families, their friends, and also their customers. Very powerful information. If we go to the next slide, Jeff. This is interesting too, because you talk about benefits. And of course, you know, Aflac is in the supplemental insurance business, and we look at benefits and how companies behave in terms of benefits. And this was really interesting for us to see. We did not suffer, you know, clients telling us, well, let's just, you know, curtail benefits. Quite the opposite, and the research shows the same. 82% of business owners maintain or increase their employee benefits level. Very powerful, even when 45% of them, 45% of this business have decreased profits. So, and an interesting piece is that it didn't matter where you sit. It didn't matter if you were urban, rural, if you were small, brick and mortar, combined, virtual businesses. It really didn't matter. This applied across the board. The second thing that was really important is, well, how do you really went through this? I mean, how do you do all this? Well, 30% took advantage of the PPP, the loan offered by the federal government. Some lower, you know, their prices and lose margin. They combine a number of different measures to go through it. But the bottom line of all this is that 80% of the people we survey, they really avoid layoffs, even with decreased profits. That is absolutely very, very powerful as well. If we go to the next slide, and we talk about social good, and this effect of the small village community I was referring earlier, These numbers are very interesting. If you think about that, in very, very difficult circumstances, 80% of small businesses maintain or expanded involvement with the community during the pandemic. So instead of being insular and just trying to protect themselves, they really went out and helped. And many of the small businesses really felt that dedicating time and resources to do good was very important. 60% over 100 thought it was important. Very, very important data, piece of data as well. So we go to the next slide. What happened with consumers, right? We talk about small businesses, we talk about their employees. Well, how did consumers respond? Well, consumers also rallied behind their small business community. They really took note of the things they were doing, even in very difficult times. So as the pandemic hit, we found that consumers, even about those that have an income that decreased, they were willing to tip more, 50%, look at that number, tipping more, even when most of them probably were on unemployment or without a job. But the other piece of interesting data in my mind is when they said they were willing, 62% were willing to spend more to support local businesses. And look at this figure coming up next. 70% were willing to sacrifice the convenience of a 2-day delivery to support a local business. Watch out, Amazon. Let's go to the next slide. So how all this play together and why this matter? I think that Natalie and Jennifer were referencing this at the beginning. Doing good is very good because consumers really take notice. If you look at this slide, in purchase decisions, almost as many consumers value how business treat employees, 58%, as much as customer service, 62%. To me, this piece of data, along with the rest of the data I show, talks about not being self-centered, right? I mean, it's not about how you treat me as a customer, it is about how you treat your people. So that to me was a very powerful piece of data. The second piece is, that 83% say they were more likely to go and frequent businesses that take care of their employees and they really care about their employees. And then the third piece of data, and certainly driven by the social upheaval our country went through in the past year or so, 60% of consumers say that they were more likely to frequent small businesses that care for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very powerful. So all in all, if we go to the next slide, I just feel like as part of a company that do care for the community, care for employees, our policyholders, and for doing social good, I was extremely inspired and uplifted by these results. I think it's really refreshing to see that even in times of great stress, our country, business owners, employees, and the community just pulls together. And it's sort of kind of have this small village kind of effect, even when most of the people served were in big cities. So the community pulled together, they rally to go through one of the toughest times in history. It's been like this for 2 years. But this is what I would call the bright side of COVID-19. There is a silver lining to all of this. We will be through this pandemic. And the good news is that all this will stay with us forever. Thank you so much for giving me time to present this with you today. If you're interested in digging more in some of the results, you can go to surveyresults.aflac.com and you will find the slides along with the video. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful 2 days. I look at the agenda and it's fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer and Natalie, for the opportunity to share these insights with you today.